The package arrived on a Tuesday. I know it was a Tuesday because I had just come back from my weekly appointment with my cardiologist, the one on Maple Street who keeps telling me my blood pressure is too high for a man my age and that I need to stop worrying so much. I told him that was like telling the rain to stop being wet. I set the mail on the kitchen counter without looking at it, made myself a cup of coffee I probably should not have had, and sat down in the chair by the window the way I do every afternoon now that I am retired and the house is too quiet. The package was small, a padded envelope, addressed in handwriting I did not recognize at first. Crooked letters, some too big, some too small, the kind of writing that looks like it fought hard to get onto the page. Then I saw the return address, Oregon, and I understood. My granddaughter had sent me something. I had not seen Maya in 2 years and 4 months. I know the exact number because I counted every one of them. My name is Harold Brennan. Most people call me Hal. I am 62 years old, a retired electrician from Columbus, Ohio, who spent 35 years climbing ladders and pulling wire through walls so other people could turn on their lights without thinking about it. I live alone in the house where my son grew up. 3 bedrooms, one of which I turned into a workroom, one of which stays empty with the door closed. My wife, Carol, passed 8 years ago. My son, Daniel, lives in Seattle and calls on Sundays. My granddaughter, Maya, is 9 years old and the best thing that ever happened to this family. She is also autistic. She was diagnosed when she was 3. Nonverbal, the doctors said at first. But that word never sat right with me because Maya was never silent. She simply spoke in a different language. She drew. She had been drawing since she could hold a crayon, covering paper with images so detailed and precise that her first preschool teacher called her parents in just to show them. The teacher was not worried. She was astonished. 7-year-olds draw houses with 4 windows and stick-figure families. Maya drew the radiator in the corner of the classroom with every valve and fitting in the right place. She drew the street outside from memory after a single glance out the window. Every storefront, every crack in the sidewalk, every parked car with its make and model correct. She saw the world differently than the rest of us. She saw it more clearly. Her mother, Sheila, had never quite known what to do with that. Sheila was my son Daniel's ex-wife. They had been together 5 years, married for 3, and the divorce had been the kind that leaves marks. Sheila fought for full custody and got it, largely because Daniel had just taken a contract job in Seattle and a judge decided that distance made him the less stable option. He got every other holiday and 2 weeks in summer. Sheila got everything else. For the first year after the divorce, I saw Maya regularly. I drove up to Toledo, where Sheila had moved back to her mother's house, and I took Maya to the park or the library or just sat with her at the kitchen table while she drew. She could not always tell me she was happy to see me, not in words, but she would bring me her sketchbook the moment I walked in the door and show me whatever she was working on. That was her, hello. That was her, I love you. Then Sheila started making excuses. I was too far away. Maya needed routine. The visits disrupted her schedule. There were appointments, therapies, evaluations. Slowly, the gaps between my visits grew longer until one day I called to arrange a trip and Sheila said Maya was not doing well and the doctors thought outside contact should be limited for a while. I asked which doctors. She gave me a name I could not verify. I pushed back. Sheila stopped answering my calls. That was 2 years ago. 2 years and 4 months, to be exact. I had sent letters to Maya since I could not get through to Sheila. Actual paper letters. Because Maya loved paper. Loved the weight and texture of it. I never knew if she received them. I never got a response. I told myself she was fine, that Sheila was difficult but not cruel, that a mother would not truly harm her own child. I told myself this at 2 in the morning when the worry woke me up and would not let me back to sleep. I told myself this until a padded envelope showed up on my kitchen counter on a Tuesday afternoon and everything I had been telling myself fell apart. I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a spiral notebook, the cheap kind you find in drugstore bins. Its cover decorated with marker drawings of birds and flowers that I recognized immediately as Maya's work. Tucked inside the front cover was a single index card with the same crooked handwriting from the address label. Grandpa Hal, I remembered your address from the letter about the cardinal. I have been saving my allowance. Please look at the pictures. Something is wrong. I did not know who else to send it to. Maya. My hands were not steady when I opened that notebook. Maya's drawings were always extraordinary. I knew that. I had been watching her fill sketchbooks since she was 4 years old. But what I found in this notebook was something else entirely. Page after page of detailed, precise illustrations, the kind that would have looked at home in a courtroom exhibit or a documentary film. She had drawn people I did not recognize, places I had never seen, documents laid out on tables with writing small enough that I had to get my reading glasses and hold the pages under the lamp to make out the words. She had drawn conversations that she clearly had witnessed. 2 figures facing each other across a kitchen table, their mouths open, their hands gesturing, and in the margins beside each figure she had printed in her careful, labored handwriting what they were saying. I did not understand all of it that first night. I understood enough. I understood that Sheila's boyfriend, a man named Denton that I had never met, was at the center of whatever Maya had drawn. He appeared in almost every page. I understood that there was money involved, large amounts of it, and that Maya had drawn what looked like official documents, envelopes with government seals, stacks of paper with numbers circled. I understood that there was a woman, drawn heavy-set and sitting in a wheelchair in many of the images, who appeared in later pages, walking and carrying grocery bags and laughing in a way that people in wheelchairs generally cannot. And I understood, in the marrow of my bones, the way grandfathers understand things without being told, that my granddaughter had seen something she should not have seen and had no one to tell except an old man in Ohio she had not been allowed to visit in over 2 years. I sat in my kitchen chair until 3 in the morning. Then I called my son. Daniel was on the next flight from Seattle. We spent 2 days going through the notebook together, page by page, trying to piece together the story Maya had told in pictures. She had a system, we realized, a logic to the sequencing that revealed itself slowly. The earliest drawings were simple. The interior of a house, a bedroom that was probably Maya's, a kitchen. As the pages progressed, the drawings became more complex, more specific. She had drawn dates in the corners of many pages, written the way children write dates when they have been taught to by someone patient, month and day and year. The earliest date was 14 months ago. She had been watching and recording for over a year. The woman in the wheelchair was Sheila's mother, Vera. We recognized her from the drawings once we looked closely enough. Maya had captured her face with an accuracy that was almost photographic, the particular set of her jaw, the way her eyebrows sat heavy over her eyes. Vera appeared first in the wheelchair. Then, in drawings dated months later, standing at a stove, walking to a car, carrying boxes from a storage unit. In the margin of one of these drawings, Maya had written, "She said her legs don't work, but they do, I saw." The documents Maya had drawn were harder to understand. She had copied them the way she copied everything, with that strange, perfect visual memory of hers, every detail exactly as she had seen it. We could make out letterheads that looked governmental. We could make out dollar amounts with many zeros. We could make out the name of what appeared to be a disability benefits program, and below it, dates and payment records. And we could make out, in Denton's handwriting, copied by Maya with her usual precision, notes about case numbers and renewal dates and what to say if anyone called to verify. Daniel looked at me across the kitchen table. "Dad, I think this is fraud." "I think so too." "How long has this been going on?" "I don't know. But Maya's been watching it for at least a year." We sat with that for a moment. My granddaughter, 9 years old, autistic, in a house with people who were running some kind of benefits fraud scheme, unable to tell anyone except through a notebook she had been quietly, patiently, methodically filling for over a year. She sent it to me because I was the only one who ever took the time to understand how she communicated. I called a lawyer that week, a woman named Patricia Hollander, who specialized in family law and had been recommended by a colleague of Daniel's. She looked at the notebook for a long time without saying anything. Then she called in her paralegal and asked him to look at it too. They conferred in the hallway for several minutes, while Daniel and I waited in her office. When she came back, her expression was careful and professional, in the way that lawyers get when they are trying to project calm. "Mr. Brennan," she said, "this notebook may contain evidence of federal benefits fraud. If these drawings accurately depict what your granddaughter witnessed, this is not a family law matter. This is a criminal matter." What does that mean for Maya? It means we need to involve the right authorities carefully, in the right order, to make sure she is protected while the investigation proceeds. If we move too quickly or without coordination, we risk alerting the people involved and potentially putting your granddaughter in a more difficult situation. Is she in danger? Patricia paused just long enough for me to understand the answer before she said, "We have to assume she could be if the people around her realize she has been documenting what she saw. I am 62 years old. I spent 35 years doing physical work that most people would not want to do. I have never in my life wanted to get in my truck and drive 17 hours as badly as I did in that moment." Daniel put his hand on my arm and I breathed through it. "We do this the right way," he said. For Maya, the right way meant contacting the Social Security Administration's Office of Inspector General, which is the body that investigates disability benefits fraud. It meant also contacting the Oregon Department of Human Services. It meant providing copies of the notebook, every page photographed and documented, to Patricia, who then submitted them through the appropriate channels with a formal statement about the source and circumstances of their creation. It also meant waiting, which is a particular kind of torture when what you are waiting for involves a 9-year-old child. 3 weeks after we submitted the documentation, an investigator named Carl Wentz called me from the SSA OIG field office. He had a flat, Midwestern voice and asked very precise questions. He wanted to know how I had received the notebook, what I knew about Maya's abilities and her manner of observation, whether I believed she had the capacity to accurately reproduce written documents from memory. I told him about the radiator. I told him about the street outside her preschool window. I told him that Maya saw the world with a precision that most adults could not match, and that every drawing she had ever made in her life had turned out, upon verification, to be exactly what it appeared to be. "Mr. Brennan," Investigator Wentz said, "we have been looking at a related set of financial irregularities in that county for several months. What your granddaughter documented appears to be connected to something larger than a single household. How much larger? I am not at liberty to say at this point, but I want you to know we are taking this very seriously." He was a careful man. He did not give me timelines or promises, but something in his voice told me he had looked at those drawings and understood what I had understood, that a 9-year-old girl had handed them a key they had been looking for. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of phone calls and legal consultations and nights lying awake cataloging every terrible possibility. 6 weeks of Daniel flying back and forth between Seattle and Columbus, neither of us able to fully concentrate on anything else. 6 weeks of looking at my phone every hour, waiting for news. Then Patricia Hollander called on a Thursday morning while I was raking leaves in the backyard, because I needed something to do with my hands. "Hal? They're executing a warrant this morning. Oregon state authorities, coordinated with federal investigators." Patricia's voice was measured, but I could hear something underneath it. "They are going to remove Maya from the home during the action. I need you and Daniel to be available to receive her." I dropped the rake. Daniel was on a flight out of Seattle before I even finished the call. I drove to Portland overnight, 12 hours in the truck with nothing but coffee and the radio and the particular focused calm that descends on me when I have something concrete to do, when the waiting is finally over and the doing has begun. I arrived at the staging location, a church parking lot 3 miles from Sheila's house, just before 7 in the morning. Daniel was already there, having landed at the Portland airport an hour earlier. We stood in the gray morning light and drank bad coffee from a gas station and did not talk much because there was nothing useful left to say. At 7:41, a child services vehicle pulled into the parking lot. Maya was in the back seat. I could see her through the window before the door opened, small and very still, the way she went still when she was in new places with new people. She was wearing a yellow jacket that was too light for the October cold, and she had her arms wrapped around herself. She was not crying. Maya does not often cry. She was looking out the window with those eyes that see everything. The door opened and the child services worker helped her out, and my granddaughter saw me standing there, and something happened in her face that I do not have adequate words for. Not a smile, exactly. But her arms came down from around herself, and she walked toward me with a directness that she rarely uses with anyone. I crouched down to her level the way I always used to, and I said, "I got your notebook, sweetheart." I understood every picture. She leaned against me. She pressed her face against my shoulder the way she used to when she was small and I was still allowed to visit, and she would fall asleep on the couch while I sat beside her. I held her, and I did not say anything else because words are not always the right language. Daniel knelt down beside us and put his arms around both of us, and we stayed like that in a church parking lot in Oregon while investigators processed a scene 3 miles away and the gray morning slowly got lighter. Sheila was arrested at the house. She had been in the middle of making breakfast when the warrant was served. Vera was arrested at her apartment across town, where investigators found documentation that had not been shredded. Bank statements, correspondence, payment records going back 4 years. Denton, whose last name turned out to be Folger, tried to tell the arresting officers that he was just a friend of the family who had been helping Vera manage her medical paperwork. The investigators were not moved. He was taken in with the others. The picture that emerged over the following weeks, assembled from evidence that included financial records, testimony, and, critically, the drawings in a 9-year-old's spiral notebook, was this. Vera had been receiving Social Security disability benefits for a back condition she claimed made her unable to walk without assistance. She had been receiving those benefits for 4 years, a total of just over $94,000. The condition was fabricated. Denton, who had a background in medical billing and a previous civil judgment against him for fraudulent insurance claims in Nevada, had helped Vera and Sheila construct the paperwork, coached them on what to say to caseworkers, and handled the ongoing renewal documentation. They had split the payments 3 ways. Maya had seen Vera walking without difficulty on dozens of occasions. She had seen documents on the kitchen table. She had heard conversations she was not supposed to understand because they assumed she was not following. She had watched and recorded for 14 months, and then she had saved up her allowance, $7.50, bought a padded envelope and a book of stamps at the drugstore down the street during a school field trip to the shopping center, and mailed her evidence to the only person she trusted to read it. When I asked her later, after the initial processing was done and we were settled into a hotel room and she had eaten half a grilled cheese sandwich and was drawing in a fresh notebook I had bought at the airport, I asked her how she had known to do it that way, how she had known to keep records, how she had known to send it when she did. She kept drawing while she answered, the way she often does when questions are difficult. She drew a cardinal, which had been the subject of the last letter I sent her, the one with my return address on the envelope. "You sent me a picture of the cardinal," she said, in her careful way of forming words that she has been working on for years with her speech therapist. "You said cardinals always come back to the same place. You said they remember." "Yes," I said. "I said that. I wanted to remember too." She did not look up from the drawing. "They said I forget things. They said I don't understand things. So I wrote them down. I drew them down. I had to look away for a moment. They were wrong about you," I said when I could trust my voice. "They were very, very wrong." She finished the cardinal. It was perfect. Every feather in place, the beak at exactly the angle a cardinal holds its beak when it is alert and watching. "I know," she said simply. She turned to a new page and started drawing again. The legal process was long and not particularly tidy. Vera's attorney tried a medical defense, submitted new documentation suggesting her condition was real, hired an independent physician to testify. The prosecution countered with surveillance footage that investigators had obtained during their 6-week preliminary inquiry, footage of Vera carrying furniture up a flight of stairs, footage of her walking unassisted in a supermarket parking lot, footage that aligned with dates Maya had recorded in the margins of her drawings. The independent physician withdrew from the case. Vera pleaded guilty on 3 counts of federal benefits fraud. She was 71 years old, and her attorney argued for leniency on the basis of her age. The judge was not particularly lenient. 4 years, with a restitution order of the full $94,000 plus interest. At 71, 4 years meant something real. Denton Folger did not plead. He went to trial and let his attorney argue that he had merely been providing administrative assistance to a disabled elderly woman and had not known the underlying condition was fabricated. The jury took less than a day to decide they did not believe him. 6 years. Federal prison. For wire fraud and conspiracy to commit benefits fraud. The prior civil judgment from Nevada did not help his case. Sheila was the hardest to watch, in the way that Renata had been hard to watch for Daniel's father in a story I had heard 1,000 times about custody fights and the damage they leave behind. She sat in the defendant's seat at her sentencing and did not look like someone who had been running a fraud scheme. She looked like someone who had been in over her head for a very long time and had only recently grasped the full weight of what that meant. Her attorney argued that she had been under Denton's influence, that she was not the architect of the scheme, that she had a special needs child who depended on her. The judge listened carefully and gave Sheila 3 years, noting that having a special needs child in the home while conducting fraudulent activities was an aggravating factor, not a mitigating one, because it had placed that child in proximity to criminal conduct and created the conditions that ultimately led to the child being removed from the home. Maya was with me by then, had been since that Thursday in the parking lot. The family court process ran parallel to the criminal one and was in some ways more exhausting, all evaluations and home studies and guardian ad litem appointments and hearings. Daniel and I both retained attorneys. Daniel flew back from Seattle so many times that he eventually asked his company about remote work options, which they gave him, and by the time the custody hearings concluded, he had moved back to Columbus. Maya has a bedroom in my house now. The empty one, the one with the door that used to stay closed. We painted it together, she and Daniel and I, on a Saturday in early March. She chose the color herself, a particular shade of green that she explained to me through a drawing of a forest in late spring, was exactly the color of the light through maple leaves when the sun is at the right angle. The paint store did not have that color on their chart. We mixed it ourselves, adding small amounts of yellow and white to a base green until Maya held up her drawing beside the paint sample and nodded. That color is now on the walls of her room. She is thriving, which is a word I use carefully because it is one of those words that people apply to children with autism in ways that do not always capture what is actually happening. Maya is not thriving because she has become more like the world expects her to be. She is thriving because she is in a place where the world has adjusted to fit her. She has a new school, a good one, with teachers who understand that a child who does not make eye contact and does not always use words is not a child who is absent. She has a therapist she likes, a young woman named Dr. Reeves, who does her sessions at a table covered with art supplies and does not seem bothered when Maya answers questions by drawing pictures instead of speaking. She has her father, and she has me, which is more stability than she has had in 2 years. She is also, it turns out, something of a local marvel. The school's art teacher, a man named Mr. Osei, who has degrees from 2 universities and has been teaching for 20 years, told me after Maya had been in his class for 3 weeks that he had never in his career encountered a child with her particular combination of visual memory and compositional instinct. He showed me work she had done in class, a drawing of the school building from an angle she had observed only once, in the parking lot at drop-off, reproduced in such detail that he had gone back to the parking lot himself to verify it. I told him about the notebook. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She was protecting herself and the people she loved with the only tools she had." "Yes," I said. "That is exactly what she was doing. I still have the notebook. Patricia Hollander returned it to me after the legal process concluded, the original with all its photographed copies accounted for. I keep it in my workroom, on the shelf above my desk." between a photograph of Carol and a cardinal feather that Maya found in the backyard and pressed between two pieces of wax paper and gave to me with a small ceremony of her own design. Some evenings I take the notebook down and look through it again. Not all the pages, not the difficult ones. The early ones, the drawings of her room and the kitchen and the small, ordinary details of the life she was living. She had drawn the tree outside her window 14 different times across 14 different seasons of light. She had drawn the pattern of the kitchen tiles. She had drawn her own hands in the mirror, the way children sometimes do when they are trying to understand how they work. She had been lonely. That is what I understand now, looking at those early drawings. She had been in a house with people who assumed she did not fully comprehend the world around her, and she had been drawing that world in meticulous detail, keeping her own record, her own account, not just of the fraud, of everything, of being alive in that house, with those people in that particular quality of light. She needed someone who would look at what she made and understand what she was saying. That has always been the thing about Maya. Not the special gift, not the visual memory, not the drawings that confound trained artists with their accuracy. The thing about Maya is that she has always been saying something. She has always been speaking. The world just needed to learn her language. I spent my whole career making sure electricity could move from one place to another without losing itself along the way. Connections, pathways, the careful work of ensuring that what is generated in one location arrives intact somewhere else. I am not a sentimental man, generally. I do not go in for metaphors. But I think about conductivity sometimes when I think about Maya and the notebook and that padded envelope on my kitchen counter on a Tuesday afternoon. She had been sending a signal for a year. She just needed someone whose wiring was still connected to hers. I was outside with Maya last weekend, sitting on the porch while she drew the neighbor's oak tree, which she has rendered 6 times now and plans to render until she has documented every stage of its winter bare to spring full cycle. It was a cold morning but bright, the kind of Ohio morning that feels like an apology for the months of gray. She was focused completely on the paper, her pencil moving with that particular intensity that means she is in the world she most prefers. I asked her, not because I needed to know, but because I wanted to hear her say it, whether she was glad she had sent the notebook. She did not look up from the tree. I was scared, she said. For a long time. I know, sweetheart. But I thought, if Grandpa Hal still sends letters with birds on them, he still wants to hear from me. So I sent something back. I looked at the yard, the oak tree, the pale winter sky over Columbus. You can always send me something, I said. Whatever language you want to use, I will always be paying attention. She finished a branch, studied it, added 3 more lines. I know, she said. That's why I picked you. We sat there in the cold morning for another hour, me drinking coffee I probably should not have had, her filling the page with the most detailed oak tree I have ever seen in my life, and the yard was bright and ordinary and ours, and there was not a single thing in the world I would have changed about it.